Welcome to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast.
Instead of self-medicating, I went for a jog. I met things head on and I made a commitment to myself that I'm going to figure this life thing and this business thing out. That was a turning point in my life. I know there's a lot of high achievers and people that are really driven, and chances are you're like me. You're your own hardest critic, and just give yourself a break. You do so many amazing things. Just focus on them. And when you mess up here or there, because you probably will because you're a risk taker, just give yourself some slack. And I'm actually okay when I make mistakes or if people don't like me, because it's like, look, here I am. You may like me, you may not like me. Sometimes there's parts of myself that maybe not be ideal, but I have this massive compassion for myself and this acceptance that trumps everything else.
That's R. Michael Anderson. He helps transform leaders through psychology and neuroscience. He's helped countless managers turn into true leaders of outstanding teams. And today, he shares his inspiring story with insights to help whether you're looking to turn around yourself or your team. So you'll learn 1, why to be more open about your struggles. 2, the drivers behind your worst decisions. And 3, the key relationship that everyone overlooks. I'm Pete Mikitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's R. Michael Anderson. Michael, welcome back.
Pete, good to be here again. It's been forever.
It has. And I was looking at our last conversation, and we moved pretty quickly past your story, which I really want to dig into some detail to hear about your dramatic rise and fall and rise again, and what was happening on the outside as well as what was happening on the inside. Because I think when it comes to leadership mindset 2.0 and imposter syndrome, all this stuff, I think there's gold lessons along your journey if you're ready to go there.
I am, Pete. You know, I share it very freely, and it's nice to be here with you and have some time. And I appreciate you asking about the outside and the inside, because as we all know, they're related, but there's often when I share this, a lot of people say that it really resonates. And a lot of times it's nice to know that other people go through some of the crazy stuff that we all go through as well.
Yes. Well, we'll start us. How about you just wrapped up your semi-pro basketball? That's a whole nother conversation, another story. And you're getting in the business game. Let's start from that beginning.
Yeah, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then I moved out to California. I joined a software company. They moved me around the world. And then I moved back to California in my mid-30s. There was a gap in the marketplace, and I don't want to say by accident, but a couple of my old clients asked me to come help them. I come from enterprise software, so Microsoft Dynamics and SAP. And so there were some big, large former clients that just needed help because the company that I used to be with that got bought out and wasn't giving a good service. And so I started just servicing these clients, and then a lot of the other clients found out that I had this software. And next thing you know, I had a proper business. I had to deal with offices. There's these $100 million companies that use our software to run their business, and was being all managed by little old me. And I was not emotionally or ready to do all this. And what happened is, all of a sudden, we have a payroll in the hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions per month. And I didn't have any, I was a good business person. I understood management. I understood the industry, but I didn't understand leadership. And I never knew what emotional intelligence was, and I didn't have a lot of great leaders to look up through. So you can imagine, Pete, it was really difficult around those years.
Okay, so I'm intrigued. Now, your success was driven just because, well, by golly, there was a gap in the market and you have exactly what these folks need, and word spread, and bada bing, bada boom. A lot of revenue, a lot of responsibility, a lot of clients, a lot of employees real quick. And you were not feeling so great on the inside in the midst of this external success.
That's so right. And because the funny thing is, from the outside, everything looked great. I mean, we were so successful. I was on the front page of the newspaper.
Congrats.
And to be quite honest, I had some substance abuse issues in the early part of my life, and the pressure made them get worse. So my father was an alcoholic. I had alcohol problems. I was doing hard drugs. And as this pressure mounted, that became more of a crutch. And so that was getting worse, not getting better by any means.
Can you actually weigh in on the alcohol and hard drugs? What were you thinking and feeling? And what did the alcohol and drugs do for you in those moments?
It's a great question. And I think I did that to not think because I didn't have any, I say tools. Like I didn't know who I was, and all this stuff was happening so fast, and I was working like crazy hours. I would bill I was a consultant, so I would bill myself out for 8 or 10 hours and go home and do the administration, and on a couple off hours, I'd do sales. And then I hired my friends from the industry. And so there was so much going on. And Pete, I remember back then, my only goal was to get to the end of the day and get to the end of the week. I mean, I was so stressed out and burnt out. Well, I wasn't even burnt out. I could work massive hours. Burnt out's not the right word. It's like life was just happening around me, and I was doing my best to hold on.
All right. So there's that sensation of, boy, just got to get to the end of the day. It's tough. Life is happening. And then what did the drugs and alcohol do for you?
Well, I think it just gave me a little respite. I mean, it's like stuff was like out of control, and my personality really likes to control. And with the substances, it was like I would have a little bit of time that would just numb everything because I couldn't take everything that was going on. So it was like a little oasis, as bad as that sounds. In a way, like I needed it because I didn't have any other tools.
No, I totally resonate with that. And I haven't used illegal drugs much in my life to resonate. But I think there are other times we seek out some kind of oasis, retreat, respite in a way that's not so helpful. And whether it's overeating or Netflix binging or whatever, it seems like a break. But then, unfortunately, it doesn't really satisfy, is my experience and that of many others. And so tell us, back on the outer world, you've got a lot of busyness, a lot of revenue, a lot of employees, and a lot of drugs. What happens now?
That's it. That's where it ends. No, just joking. Well, of course, like anything else, not like anything else, but it started to everything got worse. And I had a key employee who I gave some equity to, pretty much decided my insecurity. Yeah, he was doing a good job and he was taking on some responsibility, but I felt so lonely. We worked a lot of extra hours together, so I gave him some equity, and he had some substance abuse issues too. And we ended up getting into an argument one day. It was Wednesday. It was 10 a.m. He came into my office. He's like, asked me a question. Intentions were high because I wanted to keep growing the business, and he wanted to just have like a bit of a lifestyle business. And there was a couple things that we didn't agree on. So tensions were high. And he asked me just like an everyday customer question, an operational question. I don't remember what it was. And I gave an answer he wasn't expecting and he didn't really want. And so we started to get into an argument. And I'm pretty cool. I was just watching him get angrier and angrier. And I don't know if you've ever seen when somebody gets so angry, they get red and start shaking and yelling. That's what he started to do. And I said, look, it's Wednesday, 10 a.m. There's employees around. Just why don't you go back to your office? Let's talk about this after everybody leaves. And I thought that was the end of it. He left. He went in a way back down the hall back to his office, but then he popped his head back in and he goes, I'm going to wipe that smile off your face.
Oh boy.
And then I watched him come around my desk and he cocks back and he with all his might, he hits me.
Whoa.
Yeah. And, I saw it coming, so I turned away. But I felt the blow on my shoulder, and then we just sort of looked at each other. And then he left, and I got up and shut my door. And people ask me, like, what were you thinking back? What were you feeling? I'm like, I think I was a bit in shock. If you've ever had something so crazy happen to you and that it's going to be big repercussions, I think that's what was going on. And I kept asking myself, did this really happen? Because I knew if it did, that there was going to have to be some major things going on, obviously. And I didn't want to go down that path. So I was trying to do a reality check to see if what just happened really happened.
No, totally. Michael, by crazy coincidence, I too was one time punched completely unexpectedly, but it was by a total stranger in Chicago by the Chipotle on Belmont and Broadway. I had the same, it was so weird. I too had the same response. I was like looking at other people, just like, did that just happen? And I'm okay, thank goodness. But it is, when something that crazy happens, you doubt your own senses. I'm pretty sure that just happened, but I would like some kind of a confirmation from somewhere that really did occur. So I hear you. It's wild. It's out there.
Yeah, that's a good phrase you used that I never heard before. Doubt your own senses. That's what I was doing. And then I called up a business owner who I met recently, closest thing I had to a mentor. And I'm like, this just happened. What do I do? Because I was like, nothing prepared me for this moment. I was like, he's like, dude, if this happened once, it's going to happen again. You got to address this. You can't like blow this off. So I went down to the police station. I go, here to report an assault. They're going to be, they're like, what? I'm like, well, my business partner just assaulted me. And I said, oh, do you want us to arrest him? I'm like, oh my gosh. No, I don't think so. What else can I do? They're like, well, you can't do much else. You can like write. And so I logged it. So I wrote it in a book that the date and the time and what happened, there's a record of it. And then the next day, I called my attorney. And then the next day when he came to the office, I had an armed guard hand him a restraining order, a termination letter, because I still owned the majority of the company, and then a copy of the lawsuit. And then as each one of my employees came up, I had to sit them down and tell them, my COO, my business partner, so-and-so is no longer here because he hit me. And this is most of the people reported to him. And then I had to call all of our customers, and he was the executive project manager on a lot of big projects. And I said, hey, the guy you've been working with every day for a year on your multi-million-dollar project is no longer here, and I can't tell you why. So that was a crappy day.
Yeah. And so then shifting into the internal game, what are you thinking in the midst of having to share this news with your clients and employees?
I don't even know how I got through it. I do remember I joined a peer group of entrepreneurs around that time. And when they found out this happened, because I think it happened just over, I had the weekend to like prepare all that stuff. The one guy called me every morning. He's like, how you feeling? I'm like, well, I feel like crap. He's like, get out of bed. Because I'm basically in a depression at that point. Everything just came crashing down. And luckily I had some people that were really helped me think through things, because I think often that happens during a crisis where the most important things you need to do are within the first 48 hours. And luckily, Pete, I had a couple of people around me that really, really helped me and supported me in that time.
That's beautiful. Okay. Well, so then what happens next?
Well, you talk about the internal. So that evening after I got through that day, I'm sitting on my couch, and I was about to go in my normal methodology of escape and smoke some weed, do some coke, and drink some whiskey.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, but I just paused and I started reflecting on my life. And I'm like, what's going on? I always wanted to own a business, and I own a business and I hate it. It sucks. It's not fun at all. And it's not becoming more fun as it gets larger. And I'm like, maybe I should just go back to being a programmer. I'm good at that. And it's easy. I make good money and et cetera. And I'm like, well, no way. I made it. I did the hard part. I got a successful company. I got to figure out what's missing. And I realized I was a good doer. And when I saw other people successful and happy, and I'm like, am I broken? Is something wrong with me? It's like, I think I got like angry at God, and I didn't even know if I believed in God. It was really weird self-reflection, but really deep and really powerful. And then I'm like, look, I'm a good doer. Why don't I change my goals? My goals must be wrong. Why don't I set my sights on becoming happy and becoming a successful business owner? And I made 2 life-changing decisions that day. Instead of self-medicating, I went for a jog. So I went away from my escape, and I met things head on. I did something healthy for myself, and I made a commitment to myself that I'm going to figure this life thing and this business thing out. That was a turning point in my life.
Beautiful. Okay. So you went for a jog, you just made the firm decision. All right. So often in such moments, things are easier thought or said than done. Tell us, what did you have to go do to get in a healthy groove with your responsibilities?
Well, right around that time, I briefly mentioned earlier that I joined a group of entrepreneurs, and 2 of the entrepreneurs had just a real peace and calmness about them. And until that part of my life, I've achieved a lot, but I've never achieved any peace or calmness. And I got to know them, and both of them went through a really unique program, and I found out about it and I signed up for it basically because I know I needed to do something or I was going to end up dead. And it was a master's in spiritual psychology. And when I say spiritual psychology, it's nothing to do with religion. We learned 6 different psychoanalysis techniques from a place of pure compassion. And that's the quote unquote spiritual part of it. And we take the assumption that we're all loving beings. And if we have behaviors that aren't loving, like we get jealous or angry or sad, which we all do, that's part of the human experience. We don't judge it, but we say there's an opportunity for healing. And we use psychology to go in and heal that part of us, so that we are more in line with our true selves or our soul, if you choose to believe we have a soul.
Okay. Well, so could you share with us perhaps some of the most effective practices, interventions, approaches that came forth from that?
One thing we had to do was we call it history of loving. So we start with a genogram, which is a family tree. But then we do the family tree, but then we mark down all like the alcoholism, substance abuse, divorces, enmeshments, remarriages, etc. So it's like a whole map of your family. And so once we did that, and there's a way, it's book based on a book called Family Secrets by John Bradshaw. There's ways to follow it up. And then for me, I go after my father's unresolved issues. He goes after his father's unresolved issues. So my grandfather, his dad was a failed entrepreneur, multiple marriages, alcoholic. My dad was a failed entrepreneur, multiple marriages, alcoholic. I was getting divorced, alcoholic, and owning a business. So my story wasn't written yet. But Pete, just to see the patterns so obvious in my and in a way I knew that, but once I wrote them down and saw how specific these patterns were, it really stopped me in my tracks. So then the question is, I know what the patterns is, how do I heal it? So in this case, what I did, and again, this was over a little bit of a period of time with some great guidance. My father has been, when I went through this about 12 years ago, he had already been passed away for over a decade. So what I did is I wrote a letter from my younger self to him, and then I wrote a letter from him back to me on his behalf. And just to give you some context, my dad, he had a corporate job, and then he started his business when he was married to my mom, and it was me and my sister. And the business didn't go well. And as the business didn't go well, he started to drink more and more and disconnect from our family and just not be available. And then he finally left and they got divorced. He left, and he really wasn't in my family much after that at all. And I know intellectually he didn't leave because of me, but I realized that deep down, like there was unfinished business. And so I got in this really, I guess, meditative place, and I wrote a letter to him. And the letter said, Dad, can you help me understand? I'm confused, because we had the family with my mom and Amy, my sister, and it seemed like we were going okay. But then all of a sudden you left, and you never told me you loved me. You never told me you're proud of me. And I don't understand. Is there something that I did wrong? Is there something I could have done? What happened there? Why weren't you affectionate? Why didn't you give me love the way I was looking for it? It was really difficult growing up without you, having no relationship. And I just wanted to understand more about it. And it was very, very emotional getting that out. And then again, me writing the letter from my dad to me was amazing, because he said, hey, Mike, you don't understand. I love you so much. I'm so proud of you. And I love your sister. I even love your mom so much. But the fact is, I'm the male. I'm supposed to be the breadwinner. I'm supposed to provide for my family. And I failed in that. And, as the business went bankrupt and I got into tax problems, et cetera, I just was so disappointed in myself whenever I was around you and the whole family, that I figured you all were better off without me. And so that's why I left, because I knew you all were better off without me. And I'm so sorry, and I love you so much, and I'm so proud of you. And I see what you're doing now, and you're really amazing. And after that process, I quit alcohol and drugs, Pete, because I had a belief that deep down, I had this belief that my dad didn't love me. And I realized through this process, which I know is the truth in my heart, that he did love us so much that he actually made, I think, a pretty stupid, wouldn't be what I asked for, but he made a sacrifice, and he thought he was doing what he thought was best for the family. It wouldn't be what I chose, but he did love us. He loved us a lot. So I had a belief that I wasn't lovable, And then I realized that I was lovable and my dad did love me.
That's cool. That's cool. And so then I'm curious, thinking about how that could be applied in other domains. I suppose it might be we zero in on a wound, a challenge, a difficulty from an earlier time, and then write the letters both ways. Have you seen this manifest in other ways? Is it usually to parents, or can it also be to, I don't know, former lovers or siblings or business partners, or sort of what else have you seen in application here?
Yeah, that's a great thing to bring up like that. And what comes to me is that this is a lot about unfinished business. And when we have unfinished business, it's because our internally we've made different agreements, or we made assumptions, or we made decisions. And part of all of us know what that decision is, but it's subconscious, so we have to get to it. So this two-way writing can get to it. And you could do this two-way writing with your ego, with the part of you that feels scared. And maybe you do two-way writing with the part of you that feels scared, and then, Superman, or somebody who has great empathy or compassion or strength. There's some creativity that can go into this. But what you really want to do is make sure you're in like when I say meditative, like a very present state. Maybe you go to somewhere special to do this, because your mindset, your presence is going to really affect whether this is successful or not. And then really find out. And the big question is, who do you have to talk to, or what needs to be healed or released? And then that can be a really, really therapeutic process.
That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, Michael, so you did that exercise and it was super powerful. What happened next?
Some people ask me, like, how would you describe and this is how we'll bring it back to people in their careers and their leadership, for example. How would you describe the changes that happened during that? Because I went for the master's and then went another 2 years over those 4 years. And I say that I really got to know who I am, know, like, and trust myself. Because I realized back then I was so insecure, and I really wanted to be liked, and I wanted to be respected. I wanted to be looked up to, that I was spending all my time being the person I thought people would like and trust and respect and all those things, which wasn't authentic. And it was taking a lot of my energy to be that person. And through this process, I really got to understand, know who I am, and like who that person is, and have the trust to show that. And when we talk about leadership, and this is why I work with leaders, and then the last thing I'll say, Pete, is, once I started applying what I learned there and knowing who I am and bringing them to my businesses, because at one time I owned 3, 2 in California, 1 in Singapore, then we really started to thrive. We were on the Inc. 5000 list a couple of years in a row. We won the #1 best place to work, and I won Social Entrepreneur of the Year. That was externally, but internally, I was finally having fun as a leader, because I was bringing my full self to that leadership position. I was showing people who I am and who my values are, and then people would get energized by that. And then I was creating great relationships with them. We were creating great value to our clients, and we were giving back to the community, which I think we all want to do, but sometimes we get off track. And that switch, Pete, was so instrumental to my life that's, if I just summarize it, that's really what I help leaders do now in the workplace and in their personal life.
Beautiful. So the core there is you have a deep, clear, profound conviction of who you are, and you're able to just sort of step in that and own it and feel it and love it and believe it. Is that accurate?
Yes. And I'm actually okay when I make mistakes, or if people don't like me, because it's like, look, here I am. You may like me, you may not like me, you may like part of me, you may not like part of me. And sometimes there's parts of myself that maybe not be ideal, but I have this massive compassion for myself and this acceptance that sort of trumps everything else.
Massive compassion and acceptance. Okay. Well, so now you got the master's degree. You did some exercises with the letter writing. Can you illuminate for us, are there any other particularly powerful interventions or things you did that got you to that place?
There's tons. I'll give you a quick bite-sized one. So I learned what a judgment is, because a lot of people, they heard the word judgment, but they don't really know what that is. And the way it was defined to me is a judgment is assigning a positive or a negative thing to something. So I judge something as good, or I judge something as bad. Now, the Buddhists, they say there's only one truth in this world that something is. It is. There's no good or bad. That's human as something that humans assign. And the example I give is, say I'm dating a girl and she breaks up with me. And the only truth is she broke up with me. I could judge it as bad, like, oh, I'm a loser. Nobody likes me. I'm never going to get married. Or I can judge it as positive. Oh, great. She wasn't the right person for me anyway, blah, 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 blah. But those are both human created, the plus or the negative. The only truth there is that it happened. And I come from a bit of a judgmental family, to be honest. So I once I realized what a judgment is and that it's, let's just say, healthier not to judge, I realized that through the workday, my life was just one big judgment or one big judgment to the next. Like, I'd have a good call with a prospect. I'd be, oh my gosh, we're going to get this deal. And then somebody would come in and they'd say, I got to take next week off. And I'd be, oh my gosh, how are we going to survive without them? And it would just be a real roller coaster of emotions the whole day. And so by the end of the day, I'd be exhausted. So for about 2 months, I really, really worked on just looking at things as they are, just like data, like not this plus or minus. And it was amazing, Pete, because at the end of the day, I would have so much more energy because I wouldn't go on this roller coaster. But my decision-making skyrocketed because I wasn't making emotional-based decisions. I was just looking at what happened and taking it a very calm, collected, rational way. Because I don't know about you, but all my bad decisions were made when I was in a real emotional state. And by just keeping that level head and just realizing anytime I'd say, oh, this is bad or this is good, that's a judgment. Look, we're human. We're actually, in a way, naturally make judgments here or there. But the more we can be aware of that and just take things as information, that can help our mental health. That can help our leadership abilities. That can help our decision making. And that can help how people will see us as a calm, cool, collected person.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, Michael, tell me anything else you really want to make sure to mention before we shift gears and hear about some of your favorite things.
Oh, well, yeah, for everybody, if I could give one message to everybody, it's just to give yourself a break. I know Pete and we talked before. I know there's a lot of high achievers and people that are really driven, listen to this, that want to get ahead in their career and everything. And chances are you're like me, listener, that you're your own hardest critic. And just give yourself a break. You do so many amazing things. Just focus on them. And when you mess up here or there, because you probably will because you're a risk taker, just give yourself some slack.
All right. Well, now could you share with us a favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
Yeah. So there's a guy named Viktor Frankl. You're familiar with him, Pete?
Oh, yeah. Man's Search for Meaning?
Yeah. Yes. And for the listeners out there, he was a psychiatrist during World War II, a Jewish one in the concentration camps. And he learned, and he says that the only thing that people can't take away from you is the ability to choose. So we all have the ability to choose, and nobody can take that away. And that's the most powerful thing we have. So him just reminding me that we have the power to choose is something that I find very inspiring.
All right. And a favorite study or experiment or bit of research?
Well, what they're finding now is that our DNA can be changed. So what that means is when we live, for example, a more conscious life, that changes our actual DNA. So this whole thing about how we're wired, nothing's that hardwired. So we can change anything we want in our personalities in our life.
So are we talking about epigenetics here?
Yes.
Which I think is one of the coolest things ever. So can you expand on that just a smidge in terms of what's a thing we might do that would change how a gene is expressed in a means that is helpful for us?
Whoa.
You don't have to name the gene with the letters and the numbers. That's
I just say something like pessimism. I think a lot of us can be brought up in very pessimistic environments and households and things, and we can be very critical to ourselves and others. And, with work, we can be rationally optimistic. And so I don't mean, painting a blue sky when things are difficult, but, also finding the good in things and focusing on everything that we have. I mean, that's our grandparents came out of a lot of world wars and things and what brought up in depressions, and that went to our parents. So I think that I see a lot of just a lot of criticalness and negativity. And I really believe that with some mindfulness, we can really change ourselves to really live a much more peaceful, positive life.
All right. And a favorite book?
Favorite book? I like Mindset by Carol Dweck is one. That might be one you get a lot.
Well, I think Mindset's excellent. And maybe, since you talk a lot about this kind of thing, I'm going to give you a follow-up on Mindset. Okay, so I think listeners that may have heard it before, hey, you got a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And the fixed mindset is you believe that your strength, your skills, your abilities are locked in, like I'm smart or I'm not smart. I'm good at this, I'm creative, I'm not good at this, I'm not creative. Versus growth mindset is, hey, I'm always capable of learning, growing, developing. And all sorts of good things happen when you have a growth mindset in terms of the effort you exert and all that. So I've heard that a few times and I'm all about it. What I find interesting, though, help me out with this, Michael, is sometimes, even though I know that's true and I want to have a growth mindset, I have a fixed mindset stuff creeps in a little bit, like, I just suck at this. And so I like my alarm bells go off like, oh no, that's wrong, Pete. That's not the most productive, helpful thought. But nonetheless, it pops up. What do you do in those moments?
It's interesting because I was trying to think because I've caught myself because the funny thing about these is we can learn it and understand it and learn it really well. But then there's parts of our life where it hides. And then like a year later, I'll be like, oh, I'm doing it there. I was trying to think of it. I found a couple lately. And the big thing is awareness. Pete, I think once you have awareness, you're halfway there. That's because it's where these things hide and we don't even know they're there. And that's why it's so hard. We got to keep looking at ourselves. But again, we want to look at ourselves compassionately, not we got to fix ourselves. We got to fix ourselves because that just gets us right back to the non-compassionate view of ourselves and back into that downward spiral. But I'll give you the answer, Pete. You want to laugh at yourself. That is it. You want to chuckle and be like, oh, there I go again. Is it going to happen again? Because you're never going to be fixed to that. But if you can take it with a little bit of humor and you can, instead of like, gosh darn it, there it is again. If you can just be like, there it is again and bring a lightness to it, that's by far the best thing you can do.
All right. Well, now, can you share with us a favorite tool? Something that helps you be awesome at your job?
My favorite tool is, it's going to be simplistic, but just listening and listening to your intuition. As a leader, I work almost exclusively with leaders that have teams. And I'm telling them, if they're talking more than a third in a meeting, even if it's a one-on-one meeting, they're talking too much. And over the years, I feel that I've become very wise, and the wisest is my intuition. And I access my intuition by listening and really tuning in to people. We're all back-to-back meetings and we're all running around. When I can take some time out, and if I have a big meeting, I go for half an hour a walk before it, for example. So when the meeting starts, I can be tuned in. And I like to be the person in the meeting that doesn't say anything through an hour meeting, except for 10 minutes left. I say the one question or the one statement that brings everything together. I want to be that person that brings the powerful question or statement out, but potentially says the least. And we do that by really listening and tuning in. And so that's my tool is really tuning in and just listening to everybody, seeing what's not being said, maybe having the courage to say what's not being said, but to do that in service to really getting the team forward.
All right. And a favorite habit?
Again, it's going to be common, but meditation. That's probably changed my life. Is the single thing that's changed my life more than anything, because it helps everything slow down. And when I don't meditate, I realize how grouchy I can get and easily upset.
And when you say meditation, what specifically are you doing?
Well, I'm a big silent meditator. So I go on silent Buddhist meditation retreats, more normally twice a year, but every morning for 22 minutes, I kneel down on a meditation cushion and do silent meditation. And guided meditation is good, but nothing beats silent meditation. And people say, oh, I can't meditate. I'm like, I don't understand. They're like, well, my mind wanders. I'm like, well, that's like saying I'm trying to jog, but I get tired. It's like, that's going to happen. That's a byproduct of trying to quiet your mind. And the goal of meditation is not to have a quiet mind. It's to have the awareness that it's I meditated this morning and probably 30, 40 times I caught my mind wandering and I just brought it back to center. But that's the muscle you need to strengthen, is that one that has the awareness and brings it back to being present. So I think there's a lot of confusion about that. And guided meditation is good, but I don't think it's a replacement for silent meditation.
Okay. And key nugget you share that really connects and resonates with folks. They quote back to you often.
So once they hear it 2 or 3 times, they get it. But your leadership mirrors the relationship with yourself. So your leadership mirrors the relationship with yourself. And what that means is all I really help leaders do is work on that relationship with themselves. Make them really understand who they are. Make them know, like, and trust that person. and make them have compassion with that person. And, leadership's a lot about putting yourself out there, and it's really about trusting yourself. You have to have this inner confidence. And the confidence isn't that you know things are going to work out or that you know it all. The confidence is no matter what's going to happen, that you and the team are going to be okay and you'll solve it. But that means being okay with the unknown. And the only way you have that is to really trust yourself. So what I do is I work with leaders to develop that relationship with yourself. Because if you talk about imposter syndrome, that's not having faith in yourself. And look, we all, when I say we all, pretty much everybody runs through imposter syndrome. I even get it every couple of weeks. But the thing is, I have the tools now that I know what to do with it. So it's about coming back to yourself. And if you don't have trust in yourself, it's about building that trust up with the relationship. And so your leadership is a reflection of the relationship with yourself.
All right. And if folks want to learn more, get in touch, where would you point them?
My name is rmichaelanderson.com, rmichaelanderson. And my new book, Leadership Mindset 2.0, is at leadershipmindsetthebook.com. And so, or if people find me on LinkedIn, drop me. And I'll tell you what, if anybody finds me on LinkedIn at rmichaelanderson and says, I'm connecting with you from Pete's podcast, I'm going to send you a free gift. So,
intriguing. Cool. All right. And do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, everybody listening, think about how you were 5 years ago, like as a leader. Look at where you are now and compare yourself 5 years ago. Chances are you're calmer, you make better decisions, you trust yourself more, you have better confidence, etc. Now, that just goes to show you that leadership can be learned. It's a learned skill. And so if you want to progress in some of those areas, whatever it is, you got to work on them. And that's really what I like teaching. So it's that confidence, it's that presence, it's having difficult conversations earlier and better. It's all those different, helping people overcome their imposter syndrome and step into their true powerful selves. All that stuff is learnable. So just like we talked about with epigenetics or whatever, set your sight. If you want to move ahead in your career and that's what's stopping you, go out and learn those tools.
Michael, thank you. This was a lot of fun. I wish you much luck.
Pete, you got to have me back in another 6 years.
You got it. I love what Michael had to say about self-compassion. If you are hard-charging, ambitious, seeking to be awesome at your job in other domains, it is quite tempting to be overly self-critical, but it is totally possible to be ambitious and strive positively with a healthy dose of self-compassion. And in fact, from what I've read and seen and experienced, that actually facilitates faster improvement and awesomeness. If you want summaries of this conversation and all conversations, you can find those at the Gold Nuggets at awesomeatyourjob.com. And the particular transcript and show notes for this episode are found at awesomeatyourjob.com/EP931. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.
Thanks for listening. To get the most out of the show, we recommend 2 key things. First, check out the extra resources at awesomeatyourjob.com. You can find this episode's transcript and links, as well as the perfect episode for your situation. You can search the full text transcripts of hundreds of episodes or explore episodes tagged by topic and competency covered. Second, subscribe to the podcast and get future episodes automatically. You can subscribe by telling Siri and several other smartphones and speakers, subscribe to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, or by tapping subscribe in your podcast player of choice. If you'd like some extra help figuring out podcasts and how subscriptions work, visit awesomeatyourjob.com/subscribe for guidance. Hope to catch you on the next episode of How to Be Awesome at Your Job.